Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. So this is part 3 video on clean architecture Mediator CQRS pattern implementing in .NET 7 Web API. Okay, so the main idea of this video is to introduce the CQRS pattern using Mediator. First, let's understand the CQRS pattern. Okay, CQRS pattern is a command query responsibility segregation. Okay, CQRS pattern, its main goal is to separate the commands and queries. Queries means operation to fetch the data from the database. Command means to save or update the data into the database. Okay, so in CQRS pattern, queries contains query entity, response model, and request model. Here, if you observe diagram, request model is optional. Okay. Same way, command also contains command entity, response model, and request model. Here, response model is optional. Okay. So here is the in detail description about the CQRS pattern. Okay. CQRS stands for command query responsibility segregation. CQRS guides us to separate our logical implementation into two categories, commands and queries. Okay, command specifies the operation like creation or updating of data into the data source, which means database. Query means specifies operation to fetch the data. Okay, in CQRS model, request and response classes are independent or owned by single operation. Here I told, right, CQRS query or command contains request model and response model, right? So each model or a class is designated to specific feature in the project. For suppose I'm having products, okay, and orders. So orders will have its own request model, products will have its own request model, okay. One model cannot share with other future, okay. So independent are owned by single operation, which means model classes cannot share between the commands. So between two different commands we cannot share, or between two different queries we should not share, and between two command and a query also we should not share. Okay, that means request and response are specifically we have to create for one functionality only. It cannot be shared. Okay. So from the diagram, one thing we must observe, request or response model optional. Here you can see optional for response model in the command and optional for request model in the queries. Same thing here explaining. That is because sometimes we will use query parameters or return a simple scalar type. In those cases, we won't create models. Why? Classes are optional means sometimes we can directly use the query parameters or scalar types means integer string query parameters there, right? So we can use them directly instead of creating a separate class. That is why they are optional here. Yeah, I think you got some basic idea, right? What is CQRS pattern? So the simple blind definition is it separates operations into two types, commands and queries. Okay. But CQRS pattern is more famous or recommended using along with mediator. Okay, if you observe here there is a mediator, right, diagram. Previously, without CQRS, this is our diagrammatic representation. Sorry, without mediator. So with mediator, our diagram looks like this. So what is the change means? Nothing will change. On top of CQRS, mediator will help us. Makes like a single pipeline for invoking the commands and query more easy way. Okay, but here there are no optionals here. Request model and response model must be defined. Okay, so there is no optional when we use mediator pattern. So here some definition about the mediator CQRS pattern. So mediator is another design pattern. Mediator builds with handlers that have capability to work with commands and queries. Okay. Mediator reduces lot of boilerplate code like injecting multiple services into the controller. Okay, if you use plain CQRS pattern, there are a lot of request model, response model, and handlers, right? All those classes models we need to inject it into our controller, or we need to explicitly create into our action methods. Either these two things will happen. Means more number of managing the objects we have to do manually, but using the mediator will reduces those code. Okay, so injecting multiple services into the controller reduces multiple injections. Okay, mediator provides single entry point that expects a request model. So based on the request model, corresponding handlers gets invoked. So it is simply a single pipeline, okay, where it only takes input request model, okay, based on the request model automatically through the registrations, it can identify which handler to execute and which kind of response must be returned from the job, okay. So based on the request model, corresponding handlers get invoked. We discussed. It works as a centralized communication hub. Okay. So basically, a mediator works as a centralized communication hub for interacting with either commands or queries. So normal CQRS pattern based on the query parameters or input type, request and response models are optional. But for mediator pattern, it is required. Request model is mandatory. Okay, response model also sometimes we can use scalar options, but request model is mandatory in CQRS. Okay, now let's introduce CQRS into our application, sample application. Okay, so first thing is I want to install the mediator package. So where I want to install means I want to install in the application, okay, and also in the API means UI layer project. Okay, first make sure your path is up to application layer. Okay, now I need to install this mediator package. So copy, add it in the terminal and install it. Okay, and the package is installed. To cross verify it, I can go to CS project of application project, and here I can see mediator package is installed. Now change the path to API in the terminal, and let's install mediator package here as well in the API project. So copy the command, paste it and install it. Okay, package is installed. Let me check in API CS project file. Okay, so here you can see the mediator package. Now I need to register the mediator service in the application project. Okay, we have a class like register services in the application project, right? So there I can register my service. Okay, services dot add mediator. Okay, to this service I have to pass my assembly name. Okay, so that it can automatically loads all CQRS related packages. Dot register service from assemblies method. To this method we should load assembly file name so that all mediator related files it can load, so that it can inject those files wherever our application requires. Okay, to get the assembly name I can pass like assembly. Okay, this comes from references. Sorry, assembly. Okay, this comes from reflections dot get current executing assembly. Okay, so now the why current executing assembly means if our application are having some files related to Mediator, if API is executing at that time, API this injection will take. If it is taking files from the application layer project, then application will take. So based on automatically it switches executing assembly means okay. So this is the single registration for mediator. We no need to register every individual mediator related file. Like this with single registration, that is enough. Okay. Now in the application project, I need to install one more package that is AutoMapper. We know AutoMapper, right? For mapping the object from one object to another object very easy way. So let's install the AutoMapper also into our application layer. First, make sure our path is up to application layer. Now this is the package I need to install AutoMapper dot extensions dot Microsoft dot dependency injection. So it will automatically install AutoMapper library also. So let's copy the command, add it here and install it. And let's check the our CS project file of the application project. Okay, here you can see the here you can see the AutoMapper package reference. Okay, now let's register AutoMapper service also. Okay, so to register the AutoMapper service, let's go to the our register service file. Okay, here only. So add AutoMapper. Okay, here we can simply pass our assembly dot get executing assembly. Okay. Okay, now let's create the files that represents our CQRS pattern with Mediator. Okay, so what I will do in the application layer only, we are going to contain all the CQRS related files. So first, let's create a folder that represent my feature or the functionality. My functionality is related to beaches, right? So I am going to create a folder like in the application layer. I will create a folder like beach. Okay. So inside of it, first I want to implement a API call. Okay. That I want to fetch the records. So we are already fixed, right? We want to use the CQRS pattern. So for fetching the record means we have to implement the CQRS query handler, right? CQRS contains two operations, query and handler. For fetching, we have to use uh, query, right? Query, right? So let's create the query related files. Here you can see, right? CQRS contains query and comments, right? So now if I am working on query means I have to create at most three files. One file is query handler, another file is request model, another file is response model. These three files must and should I have to create. So inside of the beaches, let me create one more folder like get all beaches. Okay. Inside of it, I will create query handler for get all beaches, request model for get all beaches, response model for get all beaches. Okay. First, let me define the response model. Okay. So response model is nothing, almost equal to our beaches entity. So first, let's create the response model. So response model is like get all beaches. Okay. Dot get all beaches response.cs. Okay, here is our response model. So this response model almost similar to our beach model. So let's copy the properties from our beach model. So copy these properties. So in my query operation, I have created my first file. So I have created my first file as response model. Let me create the request model now. Okay, let me create a request model like get all features request.cs. So in my case, my request model is empty, but we know we have to create request and response model mandatory when we use CQRS. But in my case, here get all beach request is empty. But in real time, we will have parameters like any filtering properties or pagination properties will definitely have. For this demo, what I am doing, I am getting all the data directly without any filtering or pagination. That is why my request model will be empty without any properties. Okay. But so here, Mediator provides single entry point that expects only request model. So based on request model, corresponding handler gets invoked. So main thing in Mediator CQRS pattern is request model. Okay. Cannot use the plain request model like this. We have to specify mediator type or inherit the mediator I request. Okay, I request. Okay, and to this I request, we have to specify the response model type. Okay, so response model is get all response model. Okay, so now this is mediator type CQRS request model. So it must inherit I request type, and there we have to specify the response type. Okay. So from the query operation, I created request model and response model, right? Now the pending is I have to create the query handler. So now let's create a class for query handler. I will name it like get all features query handler dot cs. Okay, here is my get all features query handler. And now if I observe the folder structure, see, now I have created three classes: query handler, request object, and response object. So we are in right flow. We are now this query handler must inherit I request handler. Okay, that loads from the mediator. Okay, and here we have to specify our request type and response type. So we know our request type is get all beaches request and get all beaches response. Okay, now let's implement the I request handler. So it will implement one method that is handle. Okay, so whenever we invoke this request object from our mediator, we will write that code not yet implemented. So if we just pass this object, it will automatically invoke the corresponding handle method. Okay, that is the beauty of the mediator. Okay, we can gather the information related to the query handler based on the request object. That is why one request object and one response model must be assigned to one query operation or one command operation only. Okay. So now let's implement our database fetching logic in this handle method. So let's inject our I my old DB context first. Okay. Okay, now using this MyWorldDB context, we can invoke our database and fetches all records from the beach, where results equal to, okay, MyWorldDB context beaches dot to list async. I want to use asynchronous call. Okay, async, sync, sorry, async. Okay, let's import the entity framework namespace. Okay, let's return this result directly. Okay, first thing, it is returning to list async, but my response type I have given like a single object, right? So I must change it to collection. So from here we must change the response type. So like list of get all responses. Okay. Now here also I need to change like list of get all responses. Okay. And here also we can change. Here we can change it to list. Okay. So one issue fixed. But here we are directly returning the beach type. But our output type is get all beaches response type, right? So for that I can use the mapper, AutoMapper here. So first let inject the IMapper service into our constructor. Okay. So import the namespace. Okay, inject the IMapper service. Okay, so I can use mapper projection technique, means directly inside of the query we can convert it. So using project 2, I think. And here we have to specify the type, that is get all each responses. Okay, and here we should pass the mapper configuration. So underscore mapper dot configure provider. Okay, so project to import the namespace. Okay, so to here we are converting beach model to get all beach response type. And here inside of it we are passing configuration provider. But till now we haven't created any configuration between the beach model and the get all responses. So we have to create a configuration or the profiler file. Okay. So here we will create one more profiler file. Okay. So get all beaches mapper file. Okay. This is my profiler file. Okay. Here is our mapper class. To make it AutoMapper profiler class, we have to inherit profile. Okay. That loads from the AutoMapper. So here we have to add the constructor, and inside of the constructor we have to add the configuration mapping using create map. Okay, here first we have to specify the source and the destination object. So how to determine source and destination object is, here I want to converting beach type to get all beach response type. That means beach type is the source type and get all beach response is the destination type. Okay, same way. So here create map, first type will be source, second type will be the destination. So we know source, right? Source is beach model. So let me give the beach model source, and the destination. Destination means our get all response model. Okay, that's it. We are created the profiler file. This profiler file automatically get injected into the AutoMapper service. Here we have registered, right? AutoMapper service. that will take care of loading those configurations. Okay, logical implementation is done. Let's create the get endpoint. So for that, let me create a new controller in our API project. Okay, so let me name it like speech controller.cs. Okay, here is our controller. So first let's inject the mediator service into the constructor of the controller. Okay, sorry, I mediator. Mediator, I believe. Okay, let's try to import. So, okay, here spelling is little bit different from normal mediator. Okay, underscore mediator. So let's inject this service. Okay, so I mediator. Now let me create the action method to fetch the all records from my database. Means I am creating a get endpoint. Okay, public async I action result. Okay, task I believe task we have to give asynchronous call, right? And get async. Okay, and decorate with HTTP get method. Okay, and here what we can do means where result equal to mediator dot send. So wherever we use or invoke our CQRS, we simply call this line of code. I mentioned right, Mediator works as a center hub like a single pipeline. So in this send method, we have to pass our uh, request object. Okay, here we have one request object, right? So this request object must be passed. If we assign request object, it will automatically invoke the corresponding handler method. Okay, that is why request object is not a normal request class. It inherits iRequest model because whatever this request model and the response model registered with iRequest, right? So that can uh, automatically find out the handler based on the I request handler because here we again specify request object and response object. Everything will be automatically taken care by the mediator library. Nothing we have to do. We just understand the flow will be like this, like this. So on creating the request object, it can invoke the corresponding request handler. Okay. Now I simply pass the object of the my get all features request model. Okay, and finally return the result. Now once build entire project, so there are some errors. So where I am getting error, each name is not defined in I my old DB context. Okay, go to I my old DB context. This beach name doesn't recognize it because of we have created one beach folder in application project, right? So it is getting conflict with that. Okay, now what I will do, I will give fully qualified namespace. Here I remove dot. Okay, and remove this using. Okay, let me rebuild again. .NET build. Okay, no errors. Our application is built successfully. Let's go to the API root path. Okay, here let's run our API project. And here we can see our get endpoint, right? Click on it and try to execute. I have already inserted a sample record into my database. If everything goes good, I will get response data. Okay. So something is not working. System action instance. Okay, okay. I haven't awaited. Here I haven't awaited. So let's add await here. Okay. So rerun my application. Try again. See, 200 and I am getting some response. Beach name, place, ID. Okay, API response. That means my get endpoint is successfully executing. That means we have implemented a sample project using clean architecture and using CQRS pattern with the help of Mediator. Okay, but till now we have discussed only about query operation, right? Means getting the data. Next, we are going to discuss about CQRS command operation. That means saving or creating data into the database. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video delivered some useful content to you all. If you like the video, please do support me by subscribing to channel, and please don't forget to like and share the video. Soon we are going to meet with new content. Until then, signing off.